it's Emily. Welcome back to my channel, and it's finally that time to film my January reading wrap-up video. Now, in the month of January, I read a total of 27 books, which is pretty good. My goal was to get to 29 because that was how old I was turning this year, but I was just too shy, but I still had a pretty successful start to the year. Of those 27 books, I had 6 5-star reads, 5 4.5-star reads, 6 4-star reads, 6 3.5-star reads, and 4 3-star reads. So I'm gonna break them down into sections by rating and kind of my brief thoughts on each of these books. So let's get right on in and try not to make this video too long. So for the 3-star reads, first one is Sailor Moon Volume 7. This is kind of in the middle of an arc. However, I did feel myself zoning out at times during this arc and felt like some of it was kind of repetitive with how quick the battles lasted between the Sailor Scouts, which is why I gave this one 3 stars. The second 3-star read I had was Half the World by Joe Abercrombie. I read Half a King about 2 or 3 years ago and absolutely loved that. And then this one kind of sat on my shelf for a while before I finally got around to it. And I think the main disappointment was that we switched from Yarvy's perspective and are introduced to two new characters with Thorn and Brand. And I loved Yarvy's perspective so much. Getting 2 new characters kind of disappointed me, and I just didn't have as much joy reading it as the first book, which is unfortunate because the first book was just so great in my opinion. And there is another book after this, and I'm kind of debating if I'm going to continue on with the series or not. If you think the third book will redeem itself and I should continue on, feel free to comment below. But as of right now, I'm kind of up in the air about if I'm going to finish this series or not. The next 3-star read I have is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. And this one, it was alright. The writing wasn't my cup of tea, and it did get kind of repetitive at times, especially with the phrase, "and so it goes," which is kind of why I docked points, because I just was getting annoyed with how repetitive it was getting. The last of my 3-star reads is The One and Only Ivan by Katherine Applegate. This one got 3 stars from me because I didn't find it very believable with how stuff happened in it, which obviously it is a kid's book, so I guess fact-checked wise, kids aren't going to know. But it was still a really heartwarming read overall, as we're following Ivan, who basically is living as an exhibit in a shopping mall and his journey of getting out of that shopping mall. But still a nice, cute little read, and something I would definitely recommend a younger child to read because they would probably adore this book. It's just out of my age range. Moving on to my 3.5-star reads, I have The Steel Prince, which is the 3rd graphic novel in the Shades of Magic prequel. And this one, I thought wrapped up things very nicely. However, still, there were some pacing issues as with the prior 2 books, and I think I probably would have enjoyed this more in a novel format. But still, overall, a great read from one of my favorite authors. Death Note Black Edition Volume 2, which contains volumes 3 and 4 of the manga. I am trying to math in my head, and I am not succeeding. This was another 3.5-star read for me. I wanted to enjoy the book. It's just sometimes I just was zoning out. I think this is a very text-heavy manga, so it's not as quick of a read as some of my other mangas, which I do enjoy reading mangas because they are quick reads when I just want a brain refresher. But because this one was so text-heavy, it wasn't very therapeutic reading-wise. Though I did still enjoy the story overall, and it is starting to pick up. So I do want to continue on and see what else happens in this series. The next of my 3.5-star reads is the 6th volume of Sailor Moon. Here we are starting a new arc. We have some new characters introduced. And so this is more of like a building base. So not much action scenes, but more character building scenes. But I still kind of found myself zoning out at times. And of course, this was written like early 2000s, so some of the stuff, is kind of not stuff that would fly in today's society. The next of my 3.5-star reads is The Kindred by Alicia Dow. This is a YA sci-fi that starts out set in space, and then due to some circumstances, the characters have to escape to Earth and try to clear their names. And I wanted to love this because I thought it was an interesting concept with the kindred system. However, some of the plot points just felt like they just conveniently happened to move on to the next stage. So that's why I kind of docked some stuff, because stuff just seemed to happen too easily. But still, it was a nice read that I did enjoy overall. Another 3.5-star read for me was My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologies by Frederick Bachman. I have read several of his works, and this one's not like my top fave of his, but I still did enjoy it. And basically, in this book, we have a wide range of characters, and we're following 7-year-old Elsa, as she has been set with the task of delivering letters to her fellow flatmates after the death of her grandmother. And overall, I thought this was a sweet and heartwarming read. However, Elsa came off a little adult at times, and one of my biggest caveats, which is a spoiler, so in the next 10 seconds, don't listen, but the dog dies, which is another reason I talk some stars. But still a very heartwarming and enjoyable read overall. The last of my 3.5-star reads is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is a contemporary romance set in a college setting. Overall, there was good character growth between the characters. However, it is a heavily cliche writing, which led me to rolling my eyes at times, which is why I only got 3.5 stars. However, if you're looking for a quick and fast read with some steamy scenes, then I would recommend checking this one out. The first of my 4-star reads is Bella Morte by Bella Higgin. This is a vampire novel where vampires are kind of seen as idols, and people can apply as donors to live in these houses. Now, this book, the characters were a little flat and stiff at times. However, it hit a lot of my fave guilty tropes, such as vampires and stuff. So I kept wanting to know what happened, so I kept turning the pages to see what happened next, which is why I got 4 stars. And I am excited to see what the second book is going to bring to the table after all that happened in this first one. Another 4-star read of mine this month was Your Brain's Not Broken, Strategies for Navigating Your Emotions and Life with ADHD by Tamara Rosier. And this is kind of like a ADHD self book. It's semi-informative, and it does offer some tips and suggestions to help manage your ADHD, as well as helps to validate that your mind is not broken with the way you think. So, of course, this did touch home with me several times. I do have ADHD. However, some of the self-help stuff that was suggested in there wasn't self-help I probably would follow, but it is good suggestions for those that it might help. The next 4-star read of mine was The Lies of Locke Lamore by Scott Lynch, which is the first in a series. And this book, I think it started out really strong with a heist. However, it was a little lengthy, which is why it only got 4 stars for me, and I did find myself zoning out at times and found myself enjoying the past narrative more than the present narrative, but still a great read overall. Next 4-star read of mine is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, which is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. And this was a great conclusion to the series. However, some of it was a little meh, because everybody seemed to get a happy ending, which is why it only got 4 stars from me. But I still enjoyed the series overall, and I'm glad that I finally got it finished. Haikyuu Volume 5 was a 4-star read for me. This one, we are starting the Inter High Qualifiers arc. So there's a lot of great volleyball games seen here, and overall enjoyable read and excited to continue on with the series. Another 4-star read for me was One Giant Leap, The Impossible Mission That Flew Us to the Moon by Charles Fishman. And basically this is a very informative read, which I did listen to on an audiobook, and the narrator is very great in this because it presented the story without making me fall asleep. And I did learn a lot of stuff here because history classes didn't really touch much on the 60s. So I think it's great and very informative, and definitely would recommend if you want to learn more about the race to the moon and kind of what kickstarted today's digital age that we are a part of. Moving on to my 4.5-star reads, I have Demon in the Wood, which is set in the Grishaverse. And this is a graphic novel that's kind of an origin story to the Darkling and showing the why of the way he is during the Grisha stories. And it was a very nice and enjoyable quick read, and definitely did enjoy this little origin story, kind of depicting the Darkling in a different light to how he's viewed in the Grishaverse. A 1/2-star read of mine was Carnival, the Omnibus Bind-Up Volume 14, which is the final volume. So the series is finally over, and I think it did a very good job of wrapping up the series. So I'm sad to see the series end because I did really enjoy reading it over the years, and I've been reading this from the beginning. So it's kind of sad and bittersweet that it's over, though I did think it did wrap up very nicely and kind of left an open-ended ending to see that maybe we could get a spinoff, I hope. But still a great read. 2 more 4.5-star reads for me are Haikyuu's Volume 6 and 8, which are set during the Inner High tournament arc, and of course great reads, and definitely enjoying the series as it picks up. Silver Spoon Volume 8 is another great continuation to the series. Going back to some really great characters as we learn more about agriculture and also face some dilemmas in this installment, which is why I gave it 4.5 stars, but still great continuation to the series. Finally, moving on to the 5-star reads, I have Night Shadow, which is the second book in the Greatcoat series, and is a great continuation on with the series. However, I did have a little bit of a rough start getting back into it because it's been so long since I read the first book. But once I got back into the story and started, remembering all the characters, I literally breezed through this book and definitely enjoyed it. Another 5-star read for me this month was just a little quick, cute little book called Mysteries of Thorn Manor, which is a companion to The Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Now, I won't spoil too much of this one, so if you haven't read Sorcery of Thorns, you don't get spoiled by the characters. But I thought it was a really cute follow-up after Sorcery of Thorns ended, and definitely a great read. Seraph of the End, Volume 26 is another 5-star read of me. Great continuation onto the series. Stuff is starting to really pick up here, and I can't wait for the next volume because this is another series I've been basically reading since the beginning, and I just wish the volumes would release faster, or I had discovered this manga after its completion, so I'm not having to patiently wait months for each release. But still great read, and can't wait to see what happens next. Another 5-star read for me was Haikyuu Volume 7, which is part of the Inner High arc. And what I really enjoyed about this one is we finally got to see Suga have some court time after Kageyama got subbed out to kind of calm down. But still, great read and great addition to the series. Another 5-star read for me is The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud, which is the first book in the Lockwood & Co. series. And this is basically a series that's kind of set in an alternate reality where about 50 years ago, they started having issues with ghosts. And so these kids that kind of can see and sense ghosts were basically tasked with putting ghosts down. And over the years, agencies have sprung up and stuff, and Lockwood & Co. is one of these agencies of youth tasked with kind of helping fight the ghosts. And I really enjoyed this book. love the banter, love the plot, and the characters. So great read. And also, there's now a Netflix adaptation, which I have watched, and it does a pretty accurate portrayal of the series. I mean, obviously they changed some stuff for like wow factor, but still great series and great TV adaptation on top of that. The last of my 5-star reads, and probably my favorite of the month, is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. And this is a book kind of set, I believe, end of the 1800s, in a reality where fae and stuff exist and are well known to humankind. And Emily is a professor of this fae, and she's out on an expedition to learn more about the folk. And eventually her rival joins her on this expedition, and this is kind of a slow burn enemy to lovers romance with fantasy thrown in. And I really did enjoy the read, enjoyed the banter, enjoyed the characters, and also see that there's a hint of a possible second book in this series. So of course I can't wait for that to be released too, because this one's so great. And obviously this is my Fairy Loot edition, and it's absolutely stunning. So another plus to have a book I really loved be so beautiful on top of everything else. Well, I guess that's it for today's video and all my rambling of what I thought of the prior month's books. But I guess if you did enjoy, feel free to click the like and subscribe button down below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.